everyone, Anita here and welcome to week 21 of the 52-week illustration challenge. I almost said 30-day sketchbook challenge over there. It's just making videos for the sketchbook challenge every day. It's kind of rubbing off on me. So yeah, but it's definitely the 52-week illustration challenge. And the theme for this week was ink. And I immediately knew I wanted to do something with tattoos. Just because, I don't know, just ink tattoos, that's the first thing my mind goes to. Even though I don't have tattoos myself, but I just respect the whole tattoo art. So that's kind of the idea I had. But the problem was, however, that I am not by any means a tattoo designer. I don't have the mind to draw tattoos. I don't know. It's just, I tried and I can't. But, you know, people are good at different things. Tattoos are definitely not my thing. But what I thought, I'm an illustrator, so I'm going to do it the illustrator way. And so I've envisioned this little scene where there's this tiny little character who's doing a tattoo on a very big character, like much bigger, muscular character. And this thing actually came from, the inspiration for this idea came from this manga I've read a long time ago. If you don't know what manga is, it's a Japanese comic book. And I've read it a very long time ago, and there was this one scene where there was a female tattoo artist, and she was like this very tiny girl, very petite, not just tiny compared to the men she was tattooing. But she had so much power and so much, spunk, that the big men were just in total respect for her, and I really loved that. So that's why I've decided the tattoo artist to be tiny, and I also wanted to do, when I was thinking about the big man, the first thing that came to my head was a bear, and so I thought, why don't I just make some animals? I don't think I've done a scene like that with animals before. Usually I would go straight for kind of like a human characters. And I thought it would be interesting to have a more serious scene with animals. I don't know what exactly I wanted to achieve through serious, but for me, this was a serious scene, okay? And I was immediately, when I thought, of course, about the comic book, because it comes from Japan, and I really like the Japanese tattoos, I also wanted the whole scene to have just a tiny little bit of a Japanese feel to it. Now, I've been really watching a lot of pictures of Japanese interiors lately, so I also wanted to incorporate that. But you shouldn't look at this picture as like a Japanese picture, I suppose, because I really took everything extremely lightly. As you can see here, you have a garden of roses. Very Japanese. I don't know, there were just little elements that I wanted to incorporate to achieve that feeling of room and space and just freedom. I don't know why freedom, but that's what I like. There's this really peaceful quality to the Japanese pictures, the pictures of Japanese rooms that I've been seeing. And I wanted to have that. Feeling. And so I've made this really very simple, really interior, because there's nothing in it. That was one of my important aspects I wanted to include. And I really wanted to have this garden outside that would be reflected on the man's back, on the bear's back. And I am not really a big fan of traditional, just black and white tattoos. I've been in love with those, like a really watercolor tattoos. They make them sometimes. I see them once in a while. And I absolutely love that. So that's what I wanted to add. And so the garden that I'm working on right now is reflected on the back. So basically it's the tattoo. And this picture took a very long time to finish, just because I rarely draw interiors like this. So I didn't really know how to achieve the feeling I wanted, and so I'm adding tons upon tons of layers, just flat layers of paint. If you see me adding one you will just basically have seen them all. And so I'm doing a lot of cuts in this video, just simply because it was just too long. I have 3 hours of footage on my camera that I can fill, and I tend to paint much longer than that, so... but the most important things I wanted to show you here are the flowers, because I really was kind of... I say that a lot, I know. But I was struggling a little bit because I really didn't know how and what color I wanted to use. How I wanted to achieve that depth and that cool feeling. At first I wanted to have hydrangeas because they have that cool quality. When you're looking at them, you feel very fresh because they're blue and they have the very dark green leaves, I'm sorry. But on the other hand, I didn't want to use blue, and I've already used hydrangeas in one of my previous paintings. I wanted to expand on that. Plus, I'm really into drawing, I call them peonies, but the more I looked at this picture, I was like, these are roses. These are just roses, let's be honest. There's nothing peony about them. And I really wanted to use them, just make them really pink and orange, kind of like a very warm colors. Because in contrast, I wanted the room to be cooler. And so I was just adding, as you can see, I'm fiddling a lot. I'm adding very thin layers of color, just layering. And the reason why this painting took so long is because it's an A4. I promised myself to start to use A5s on the paintings for the challenge, but since I've been working so much on the 30-day sketchbook challenge, I didn't have time actually to produce any new bigger paintings recently, and I like that. I don't like that I didn't produce any, and I wanted to draw a little bit more of bigger paintings. So that's why I thought this idea was worthy of an A4 piece, if that makes sense. So, all in all, don't be surprised if I'm skipping a lot of footage if you see some parts being already finished. That's because whenever I was adding some extra layers of color on top of the existing, just the same flat layers of color, I just decided to cut that out. And the same thing when I add lines, majority of things I just don't show you. Here, I had a little bit of an epiphany. When I'm adding those dots, they're supposed to be flowers later on. They look like he's diseased. He's some kind of, like he has, those big sores on his back. And I was like, no, this doesn't look the way I wanted it to. But as I was adding more colors and more shapes, it all started to, get like pulled together. And one of the reasons, because as you notice, I've started with the garden, because I wanted to match it to the tattoo. And after that, I planned to paint in the characters, but I had a problem with this guy over here because I really didn't know what color I wanted him to be. At first, I wanted him to be like this very dark brown bear, but I didn't know how that would look like with that tattoo. That was my first idea. I wanted him to be dark brown, and I really liked that, but I was afraid that I would lose some of the color and it wouldn't look natural. Of course, the whole idea that he has fur because he's a bear and then he has a tattoo on that fur doesn't seem natural at all, but that's the beauty of illustration. I can just do whatever I want, but I still wanted to be a little bit believable, so I was kind of like thinking the whole time. I just decided to skip this part and leave it until I had a good idea of what I wanted to do. And so I've done everything around it first. So that's why you see I started with the tattoo and then I just leave it the way it is right now. Just move on to something else. This part here, when I'm adding those little middle peony pieces, there's probably the favorite parts. It really pulls the whole flower together. And now I'm working on the background. Now the background was supposed to be really simple, and it really is simple. It just took forever to fill in all those areas with different colors. And then layer enough color to get the shades I wanted, the intensity I wanted. And I wanted to, especially the paper screens, I wanted them to be a little bit stained. I didn't want them to be completely flat. And here I'm adding, I wanted them also to be a little bit transparent, just a tiny little bit. That's why I'm adding colors, as you can see here. And then later on in between shots, I've added that to the other screen as well. Because I wanted them to be slightly bit transparent. And as you know, I'm adding lines recently with watercolor. And to be honest, I'm starting to like it less and less. I really love the effect. But this painting would take much less time to finish if I actually had some kind of water-resistant pen, because I often put in lines before I finish coloring. Like, I will put in lines and then I will decide, oh, I think this area needs to be a little bit darker. And I layer on top another layer of watercolor. And unfortunately, if you're lining something with watercolor, that layer underneath is going to be a little bit washed. It will just reactivate. It's just a natural thing when you add watercolor. And so it creates this really, really ugly, just a really not attractive texture. Sometimes it's very handy. For example, I use that to get a little bit more of a worn down effect on the inner screen. You will see me doing that later, but all in all, I would prefer my lines to be rather crisp. I really need to find something to start lining my paintings with, but I tried using one of those new pens I've purchased recently, and just the effect was very sharp. The color was very intense, and honestly, I didn't like that. I started doing that on the lower flowers, the bottom flowers in the garden, and that's the only part I've used it all later, because after 2 lines, I've decided it was just too dark, and I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? But then I've lined everything else, and I came back to that little garden to add some more of the fine liner line and just make it a little bit darker, so it kind of turns into a gradient. As you can see, the flowers at the bottom are darker than the ones at the top, and so I'm still thinking about it. It's problematic, but I will find eventually I will find a good way to. I really wanted to try and use water brushes for it, but unfortunately the cheap ones that you can buy are not the good kind. They do not hold the water as they are supposed to, and to be quite honest, buying the expensive pens, the ones that are the paintbrushes, water brushes, they're actually doing their job. It's probably much cheaper to just buy either a pen or just do it with a paintbrush. So the bunny tattoo artist is probably my favorite part of this piece, just because it was so easy to draw and it came out looking so natural and just exactly the way I wanted it to. So this is actually a girl, a female tattoo artist, and but I didn't want her to be overly feminine, so it can just as well be a guy, just a rather, fancy dressed guy. I really like those sleeves. I know they're probably completely impractical for the kind of work she's doing, but I don't know. I just really like the idea of half transparent sleeves, just trailing sleeves. I always like trailing sleeves. That was my big love for long sleeves. And the way I'm coloring these characters is actually quite simple. I'm just doing basic color and then some outlines. And in some places I'm adding just a little bit of shading, but not that much. I'm really not adding that much shading anymore. I don't feel the need to, perhaps. I will still add it to certain things like the wood panels, the surrounding, you can see there is a shade next to the door, but these kind of things enhance the feeling of depth, and I feel the need to put them in there. On the characters, however, I'm adding so much detail that I don't feel like shading is necessary. I'm getting everything I need this character to present, I'm already getting with just simple colors and lines, so that's fine. And here I'm adding the first colors to just the surrounding. It was really late at this point again. Luckily, this is the last week because on Saturday we're finishing the 30-day sketchbook challenge, and I will not have the pressure anymore of creating 2 pieces in a day because unfortunately that's how it works out with the 52-week challenge. And so it was really late and I was just adding really flat washes and my camera stopped. It's just recording at some point, but I didn't add anything really fancy. As you can see, I've just added flat colors and some of the same wood pattern as in the panels and the walk, the boardwalk, I don't know, just the paneling outside of the room. And here you can see exactly what I meant with just very minimal shading. And I'm actually putting much more attention to shading the pillow itself rather than the character, just to show, because I felt that the pillow was actually just showing, like grounding it. I felt it was necessary a bit more over there. So I feel like I don't really have too much to say about this painting. I don't know, it's just for me, it's probably because I've painted it for so long and I'm always recording these voiceovers a day after I finish the painting. And so, as you probably know, if you're following me on Facebook, I've painted this until 7 in the morning. And I am absolutely dead right now. I can't wait to go back to bed. There's still so many things I have to do, but it's just, I don't know, I just can't concentrate on what I have to say. I have literally nothing to say about this painting. It's just, for me at the moment, I painted it, I'm done. And literally also there's nothing that interesting. All the interesting parts were at the beginning when I was adding the garden and the tattoo. The rest is really just flat layers of color, because I really like actually how flat this picture is, and but that doesn't really add up for a very interesting painting. I mean, for a very interesting painting process, I suppose. I still really like this painting. And here I'm adding another layer of yellow, and I mix this yellow with just a little bit of the watercolor white. So not gouache, but the white that comes in the watercolor palette. And that white is just a very, very washed down version of gouache. It adds just a little bit more of a milky film. It's perfect for creating like pastel colors and stuff like that. And here I wanted it, the yellow that I normally use, I wanted it to have just a little bit more volume, to have a little bit more coverage, but still be transparent. And here we're arriving at the very end of the painting. And the last pieces I had to add the color to the bear. And so I've decided the last minute, literally, to make the bear just white. I've made it white and added a lot of darker hair around the edges. Just darker, and then a little bit of the same ultramarine blue as I've added in his clothing. And the idea came from just this colorful tattoo. I thought, you know, if he can be dark, then why not, perhaps he's just feeling too white and he wants to color himself a little bit more. I just thought it was a very interesting concept that he has, like he's a blank canvas and he just covers himself with whatever he feels is interesting. And I still really didn't know how far I wanted to go with the shading, because when I added the hair, I knew I wouldn't be able to add shading anymore, because of how the watercolor would just reactivate and smudge. And so that's why I've added the last bit of the light blue ultramarine layer of hair, just because it added just a little bit of different shading. And that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you would like to see the full version of this painting, then please head to my Facebook page. The link is always in the description. And yeah, if you have any comments, please just, write it down in the descriptions. I always love reading your comments. And also hit that like button if you've enjoyed the video, and perhaps subscribe if you're not subscribed yet. I make these videos once a week, so there's always a Speedpaint a week for your pleasure of viewing. So thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!